Hi, everyone. I'm Rita Mendez. I work at ISIL, and I'm part of the team that is implementing the knowledge platform for inclusive and sustainable food markets, SCISM, which is part of the work package 4 of the Rethinking Food Markets Initiative. So nice to see you all.
Yeah. Thank you. And Kikili? Yeah. We cannot hear you. You are muted, Kekele.
Sorry. Yeah, yes, I'm Kekeli Boji, a research officer, IUMI Ghana. I'm an economist in charge of agricultural financing, and I'm also part of the innovation scaling team with Min, Petra, and Abena in the Ghana office here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we've started recording. We hope that this is all right for you, just to capture our conversation. Yeah. And looking at the time, I guess we would be starting. We will switch off our camera and we'll start. Share the presentations and we just start. Hope for more people to join us. And we have another one, similar seminar in this afternoon from 3 to 4:30 Ghana times. Perhaps people will join to the second seminars as well. So this seminar actually to follow up what have been identified in the initiatives retreat in February this year, March this year. A lot of questions and needs for clarification on different terminology and concepts that Milia and SPA team actually developed within the Rethinking Market Initiative. And one of that concept is scaling preparedness. To follow up on that, we we prepared and offer these seminars for us to explore more the concepts and also to have the follow-up, discuss on the follow-up actions to make it to operationalize it. So this seminar is 1.5 hours. The 15 minutes beginning, we will focus on the concept of scaling preparedness. The second one, which focus on operationalizing it within initiatives. And we will spend also time on deep dive into documentation and communication evidence, one of the actions area in the scaling preparedness, specifically details the innovation bundles profiling. The reason why we select this because it is quite it captures the process of developing scaling preparedness, at the same time produce and document the evidence to communicate with broaders internally and also externally to the different communities. We would like to start with a mentee questions. To understand what is the scaling preparedness from your point of view, and we also would like to get an idea on what activities that you expect at a part of scaling preparedness. You can scan the QR code there, or go into menti.com using the code appear in the screen 38906684. The scaling preparedness is the analysis of how likely a technology is to be widely adopted. How ready an innovation is for scaling. Thinking about something you test will also work as scaled in terms of cost and general equilibrium effects. Okay. Thinking about something likelihood of scaling success based on the nature of technology, enabling conditions in the target areas and institutional capacities, ability to anticipate response to a phenomenon. So we can see here some element which related to innovation in technology. Some are related to what kind of achievement or quality that needed for innovation and scaling. Some are related to ability, which is like actions here. Engaging with actors for scaling more successful. Another thought regarding the action along the scaling and innovation and scaling processes here. The extent to which an innovation is ready for scaling up and dissemination. Then the second answers come. It is a principle used in the disaster risk management and emergency response, as well as in public health. Yes, especially in the context of pandemic responses, business strategy, or technology adoptions. Yeah. Very much reflect the concept of readiness, preparedness. Here another one, the state of the planning process, looking into the expected outcomes beyond the project. There is another one, being ready to scale up an innovation from the pilot level to larger or national levels, implying widespread adoption of innovation.
So what activities do you expect as part of scaling preparedness?
A lot of
Shrug.
yes, wonders, I guess so.
Innovative.
Baseline survey, yes. Thinking of partnership, yes, or business models, yes, that's right, yeah. Identify the problems and select appropriate technology to scale, yes, right.
What type of financing options do you anticipate?
Qualitative evaluation of technology demands and supplies item. Yeah. I would like to put the all the information in the perspective of innovation and scaling approaches first. As you can see here, there are so many different innovation and scaling approaches. State gate, which is used to identify and prioritize the investment into certain technologies or products. The scaling scans is also focused on scanning where the innovation and technology is ready to commercialize. And the diffusion of innovation is focused on assess the technical appropriateness of innovations and introduce this and then assume that the innovation will diffuse spontaneously along the time when certain populations of the end users is using it or adopted it. And scaling readiness, we heard a lot about it, to assess the readiness to scales of certain technology or certain technology packages, and then how to package with others secondary innovations and factors to scale. And adaptive scaling, which is focused more on on the ecosystem, the scaling ecosystem, to tackle the actual scaling on the ground based on the existing condition and situations. To put all these scaling approaches into perspective, and for a very burning questions, does this single approach fit to every innovation, context, needs, and demands? The answer is no. No single approach is actually fit to all. It depends on many elements and building block, which is including context, including the technology itself or innovation, then a stakeholder, resources, and accountability, responsibility of the stakeholders, and of course depend on the scales that we wish to reach. There is no single entry point for this innovation and scaling approaches. The entry point can be decided or selected by us, and also depend on the situation and the context. But if we put it in the different steps or different works in the innovation and scaling processes, we can see different elements here. First, normally with the research for development based innovation and scalings, we have theory, existing knowledge, scientific knowledge, and then we have research design based on, could be the theory one, and then go into implementation of the project and go into commercialize it or put it in practice, and then scale it, and then measure the impact or reach the impact that we wish for. There are so many actors and stakeholders involved in this process. Some of them, the key depends on where we start, which entry point. The key actors could be researchers, innovation partners, and scaling partners. If we start with theory, research designs, and implementations in a conventional way. But if we start with practice or scaling or even impact, we involve largest stakeholders and actors. And then many of them are not necessary at the theory, at the research design or implementation step, but later on in the practice and scaling and impact. So engaging with stakeholders, whether focus or broad stakeholders, is crucial to the scaling preparedness. The preparedness concept in the theory is normally not standing alone, but it always pack with or includes a certain context for it. In this scaling preparedness, we see it as a process of developing the food system and market actors and stakeholders' ability to catalyze innovation and or innovation bundles and accelerate the investment and adoptions. In the Menti question, some of you mentioned about ability. And ability is cannot or not only existing ability, but certain ability that need to be developed along the stakeholder engagement. And scaling preparedness is actually embedded in the innovation and scaling process, which is different from other preparedness. For example, risk management, preparedness, climate change, preparedness, etc. So it's scaling preparedness as it embedded in the innovation and scaling process. It can be operationalized through different sets of actions. First one, which is design, test, and scale innovations. And many of you mentioned about involve stakeholders and partnerships, think about partnerships, etc. The second set of action, which is involve stakeholder and enable their cross-learning. In this scaling preparedness context, cross-learning is between countries, innovation teams, countries, across countries, across work packages, and at the initiative levels, and even broader than and beyond the initiatives timeline. And the third one, which is to generate and communicate evidence. In the coming slide, we focus on operationalizing scaling preparedness from Milian's point of view, but it will have many other actions, which is from the innovation and scaling teams. As you mentioned earlier in the mentees questions. And the third group of action we need to, all of these actions actually requires the stakeholder engagement. So at the beginning of innovation and scaling process, at the theory or the research design, we already think about stakeholder engagement is not only key actors like research, innovation partners and scaling partner, but broader than that, including policy makers and government agency, including development and NGO, development actors and NGO, including end users, farmers and their community, including private sectors who are potentials for the partnerships and for the investment into the scaling. And the scaling preparedness not only a process, but it will lead to certain quality, which we can measure it. And these quality include, but not limited to, for example, the engagement degree, how many stakeholders actually engage, what are different types of stakeholders actually engage in the process and when, which entry point we already engage with who. The second one is ownership and commitment. With the engagement, active engagement of stakeholders, the ownerships is created and strengthened along the process, and we gain into commitment and buy-ins and continuation of the innovation and scaling works. And of course, we hope for the resource contributions and the investment during and beyond the process to develop and scale the certain innovation in the initiative. And very important is that as demand, needs, and context are changing, the adaptability of these stakeholders and actors to continue the investment is also a quality which we aim for. And because of that, we need to think about scaling preparedness for and with whom. And here to show certain key actors and stakeholders we should consider. One of this, which is intervention partners, as we mentioned earlier, the innovation partners, scaling partners, demand actors, for example. Then scaling actors, it could be public, private sectors entities, it could be end users, and it could be other value chain and market actors as well. And it's also very crucial to think about beneficiaries and impact that we reach for, because the earlier we engage with those actors at the impact and beneficiaries, the relevance and the adaptability of the innovation and scaling process is enhanced. Now I would like to put the innovation scaling, the scaling preparedness into this key elements perspective. So where it is innovation scaling preparedness is about in this picture. Actually, it is an achievement of the innovation and scaling process. It has certain characteristic which link to the scale, because if we can achieve certain quality of the scaling preparedness, then we can fit into multiple scales that we aim for the scaling work. And if the stakeholder and actor actually change their behavior toward the scaling and innovations, it is preconditions for the system transformation, which one of the important dimensions of the scales. And if the stakeholder commit and contribute to the scaling and innovation works, their contribute to in terms of resources, and their accountabilities is also achieved. So the scaling preparedness is one of the achievements from the innovation and scaling processes. Yeah, so the concept is what can I say, simplifies within these few slides before going into operationalizing it from Melian Spa point of view, or from Melian Spa facilitations. I would like to give few minutes for any questions and there's Nick. Okay, Nick, I see your hand up.
Yeah. I was just wondering about, we often think of these innovations and interventions as, being beneficial, and presumably they are in some global sense. But I think it's useful to remember that it may not benefit everyone, and that sometimes an intervention means, cutting out a middleman who, was taking advantage of his position, or it may mean lower returns to a processor because they, are less able to take advantage of their market power. Are there any? Maybe this is a difficult question, but do you have any suggestions or ideas about how to overcome resistance by some stakeholders within the value chain to an innovation that might, reduce their advantages or reduce their returns in the value chain? Maybe there is no answer to that, but I think it's something that we need to at least think about, because that's often an obstacle to getting widespread agreement or adoption of an intervention.
Yes,
Thanks.
yeah, definitely. But if we reflect back to the different elements in show at the slide, at the moment, the answer for that question will be whether the innovation and testing relevant and benefit to who first, and then based on that we can identify who are the relevant actors and stakeholders could engage into that, and then the engagement will strengthen their preparedness to adopt the innovation. For certain actors like meet demand in the value chain, if the innovation and intervention is cut out of that part in the value chain, of course it will be a challenge to engage them, but and then to get them buy-in. But if intervention and innovation and intervention is about how to increase the efficiency of those meet demand that lead to the win-win benefit and sharing the benefits, then they may willing to participate and they may willing to invest and agree with, and have an agreement with the innovation and intervention. Yeah. So the message here is depends a lot on these key elements and where and what we work on into that. It decides what are the stakeholder and actor to engage and involve in. Yeah. I don't know whether it's clear, but there is no specific answer. I mean, concrete answer for the questions. Yes, Nick.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. Actually, thank you for this part of the presentation. I am getting this idea, probably you assume all innovations are scalable and beneficial, but in reality, that's not the case. And actually, more recent research actually questions about scalability of many innovations. For example, John Lewis from University of Chicago Econ talks about assessment or need for assessment of vitality of innovations before you do anything about scaling preparedness. So I think, what do you think about this actually? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. The first one, all innovation are scalable. It is definitely wrong. According to scientific publications, 95% of innovation actually not scaled and failed when it reached into scaled. So we are not assuming that all innovation are scalable, but we work towards increasing scalability of innovation. And how we do that? Developing scaling preparedness is one way to do that. There are many other ways, and together it could increase scalability of certain innovations. For example, if before developing innovation or introducing an innovation to the certain context, if we start with innovation, the innovation may not relevant for the context and for the need, for the demand, right? But if we start with the context and see what actually the needs for innovation in this context, what actually, who are the stakeholders there and what are they doing, that we can build up on that. Don't need to introduce completely new innovations. That already fit into the systems rather than putting a new element into system. Then the scalability can be increased by taking the existing system and leveraging on the system needs and resources and existing initiative. The second question regarding there is a need assessment before scaling is that yes, it's correct. But the need assessment can be already starting from yesterday, not starting in next 3 years, at the end of the 3 years of initiative. And the need assessment also can carry out along innovation and scaling innovation processes. Don't need to wait until the end. Of course, there is no this kind of approach may not be applied for every innovation, but for certain innovation it is possible. And for completely new innovation, it could be wait until the innovation somehow developed in a certain and tested and produce evidence before it reaches it go into scale. But it should not be applied for every innovation. That's the point. Yeah. I hope it's clear.
My question was not about need assessment. My question was about assessment of vitality of innovations. That's a very different concept, actually.
Vitality?
Yes. That's the concept John List introduced
You
more
mean
recently, actually.
the adaptability of the innovations, or the change of the innovation when it introduced to the context?
No, I'm talking about the vitality. We may come up with very interesting ideas, innovations, but we may have errors in the process of developing these innovations and doing some experiments and so on. And that's vitality talks about that. Not only that, but it's more broader than that.
This, I have to admit that this concept I haven't yet understanding it very clear, the vitality of the innovations. Can I spend some time to study about this?
Yeah, that's fine.
And sorry, we may be revisiting this concept in another seminar, and perhaps it will become a very crucial concept in initiative as well. Yeah.
So thank you for your questions. Anyone else? You still have also another chance to ask questions, but I think also looking at the time, we should move on to the second part. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Yeah. With the second part of the seminar. Yeah. The innovation and intervention process have these different actions or steps. Disregarding ordering it. There is no single orders. These action including designing, identifying innovation, designing innovation, innovation bundles and intervention, piloting it, bundling the desired innovation with others innovation or factors, and then evaluating to generate the evidence and scaling, and strategizing the scaling strategy and actions, and of course transforming it into the act towards investment and scaling. Within the Rethinking Market Initiative, we see there are three typology of innovation and intervention processes. The first one, which is focused on piloting innovation and or innovation bundle, which includes designing, piloting, evaluating, strategizing. The strategizing the scaling strategy or actions. You can take a minute here to reflect whether your innovation or an intervention in this initiative fit into this type of process. And the second type of process, which is developing innovation and innovation bundle. And it includes identifying existing innovation, bundling them together, and continue the bundling of innovation along the intervention process, and evaluating the bundles and its potential impact, and then strategizing the scaling strategy and actions together with stakeholder. The last typology is bundling and scaling innovation bundling and scaling at the same time. And it starts with identifying, bundling, and scaling and evaluating at the same time, and strategizing and transforming the scaling actions into the reality. Can I stop here for a while and ask Jordan, based on your experience, which is Now in Uganda, for example, in Nigeria, right? You have also innovation and intervention in Nigeria. Which type of processes that it fits into and beyond in Uganda?
I think we've got two different interventions that we're currently testing in Uganda at the moment, and I think one is in the second category, developing innovation / bundle,
Okay.
which is like, you know, it's basically an innovation that already exists, but we try to insert it at particular points in the value chain, such
Okay.
that it becomes something new. And then there's another intervention where we also design the intervention itself and pilot that. So that should be more in the first category, I think.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that reflection. Gordon, do you have anything to add from your side? Do you have the...
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I'm still trying to understand this. I mean, in the case of Nigeria, like none of those are new technologies, but similar to what Bjorn just described for one of the interventions there, we're kind of, you know, bringing technologies that exist but haven't been taken up, and so I guess, you know, this, so I'm not really sure where to park that. In some cases, they're kind of bundled with some kinds of institutional assistance to you know, presumably to overcome adoption barriers. So, you know, so I don't, I mean, okay, so sorry, I don't want to derail this, but I guess I'm struggling here because oftentimes it's not just a discrete technology that we're trying to introduce. We're either introducing it in a new context or with some additional kind of institutional, you know, we're doing training around it or providing credit to ease constraints to adoption. So somehow we're trying to overcome initial hurdles to taking up an existing technology in kind of a new context. And so I'm not really sure where that fits.
But you do it in a pilot scale or actually larger scale?
Well, I think they would all be considered pilot scale. So where the you know, the promotion and the testing happens, I mean, that's at a relatively limited scale. So I would call that piloting, but it's not, these are not new, you know, so in you know, we're talking about like crates and solar dryers and solar powered refrigeration systems, things like, so the technologies are not new. So we're not piloting them in an absolute sense, just in the context of places where we think that they would make a difference, but they haven't been taken up yet.
Yeah, so it's if I get it right, it perhaps fall into the second category, right? You develop the innovation bundles and the developing already,
Maybe, yeah.
including how you make that innovation bundles fit and available for certain group of users at the pilot context, but not yet actually scale it, right?
Yeah, I think so. But then I'm confused about what that third. So I guess so. The third one is just doing that at a larger scale. Is that the difference?
Yes. The
Okay.
third one is actually doing it at larger scale and involves a lot of investment from others actors, not only from initiative. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I guess we're in 2 mostly.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I may ask Kim, when you work with KSIM, for example, that is one innovation, right? What categories or pathway that you are working with at the moment?
Thanks for your question. I was already surprised to ask me. So,
Sorry to put you on the
no problem. So, we already have a production level of the KC website, the knowledge platform on the to the public. So, I plan to have the level of the process choose the level 3. So the next step would be we can think about how we can the test our innovation with our users. That was kind of the step I looking for this year or next year.
I see. Okay. So more at the third pathways, right?
Yes.
Is there any others sharings from the participants? Nick, do you have any sharing from your work package?
Well, there's 3 different studies, and they're all kind of in the process of identifying interventions. They would be in a better position, to comment than I am. But I know that I know that, for example, in the coffee study, the focus is going to be on how to verify that coffee grown, that particular lots of coffee were not grown in areas that were recently deforested, and as a way to ensure access to the European market. I believe the EU hasn't yet imposed these regulations, but is expected to in the near future. Okay, I'm distracted by somebody's ear, but so
You're not the only ones.
Interesting angle.
Yes.
So so I think that raises a number of challenges in terms of how do you demonstrate that a particular area wasn't recently deforested, and how do you establish a system, a traceability system, so that you know which batch of coffee came from which region of the country. How do you define recently deforested? It raises a lot of challenges, but I think the team is working on that. Not to pass the buck, but if anyone from the Federico or anyone from the coffee team would like to chime in, that would be great. And the Ethiopia sesame study and Bangladesh, working on a number of issues like contracting and whether that is an effective mechanism for this. I'm talking about Ethiopia, whether that's an effective tool for improving input delivery, access to credit, and raising yields and quality of sesame production for export. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Nick. Federico, could you name your innovation and intervention processes?
Yeah, sure. So I was thinking about where it falls, and I think it falls somewhat in an intersection between a piloting innovation bundle and the bundling and scaling innovation. I guess that the thinking follows what Nick just said. So we're going to be doing a pilot, and we want to test some of the innovations that our partner is implementing right now. But the big catalyzer has been the need for really scaling the traceability real quick, because well, it's been mentioned that this is going to happen, and it actually just this week has been out in the Journal of the European Union Commission. So it is now written law. So from this time, our coffee growers have about 18 months to comply, and everybody else in the value chain. So we are going to be doing this year the piloting of things that we think could could make that process feasible for a lot of farmers. And then with a keen eye on how that could be scaled or replicated rather quick in an 18-month window. So somewhere in between 1 and 3, I think.
Kind of like combination of 1 and 3, which is
That's
very
right, yes.
interesting because this morning, Christine also reflect upon on some of the something in between 1 and 2. Again, to show that the innovation processes in our initiatives is already very diverse. This is no single processes or pathway for that. But whatever pathway we select and we follow, it's not right or wrong, but it influences the certain elements in the process. First, it influences the innovation scopes and research design, whether we work with single innovation or innovation bundles, and innovation bundle along the process. Whether we use more like impact assessment or randomized controlled treatment as a methodological approach or research design. It also influences the intervention scope, what focus that we follow, testing, bundling or scaling, or combination of those. It will also determine the stakeholder engagement, whether we work with very targeted actors in a certain collaboration and or partnerships or activities, or we target broad stakeholders and stakeholder engagement along the innovation process. And it also determines the scaling preparedness, especially the actions that we use from the process perspective and the quality that achieved from implementing those actions as well. And it, of course, determines the impacts, right? Whether the beneficiary is limited to the piloting or developing context, or broader than that, beyond the initiative already, even within the initiative time frame. Yeah. From the Melian-SPA team perspective and responsibility and roles, facilitation roles, we operationalize the scaling preparedness to facilitate the initiative and the work package and the innovation teams to develop scaling preparedness with actors and stakeholders, and for actors and stakeholders. And these actions including or can be clustered into 3 groups. The first group is stakeholder engagement in the innovation and intervention process to co-design, test, and develop and scale innovation. The second group is the stakeholder engagement in cross-learning. And the third group, which is documentation and communication of the evidence. I would like to relate the first group of actions with the innovation and intervention process. A lot of innovation teams is actually doing stakeholder consultation. When you do scoping study, when you design innovation and research, etc. As many others also implemented the stakeholder workshop for co-designing innovation and interventions. Or the workshop in Nigeria with work package 2 and 3, the workshop in Honduras with work package 1, and the workshop in Uganda with work package 2 is the example of this activity. And there is another type of stakeholder workshop later in the process to actually assess whether the innovation and or innovation bundles works and what doesn't work, what works well, what could be done differently. I briefly discussed this one with Futoshi. He was very much interested in, but very afraid. Stop, don't say about it now. Wait until next year, right, Futoshi? I hope you still remember. I also discussed this one in the initiative management team meetings. We will reach out to many of you to actually explore further the possibility to organize this second type of workshops. And the third one, which we aim for doing it almost at the end of the initiative, end of 2024, in order to assess the innovation and innovation bundles, its impact, potential or scalability of it, and together with broader stakeholder, we aim for developing the strategy to scale it if the innovation is actually scalable. The second stream of work here, which is engagement in cross-learning, and it aims to enhance the learning, leveraging on the synergy and addressing a trade-off across innovation work packages, and foster the joint efforts to achieve impact at larger scale and influence the change in the broader systems. And this one we see that we can team up with KSIM and Work Package 4 a lot. For example, across country and across work package learning, it has been somehow operationalized through science section, through different seminars, different work package and country-based teams to share their innovation and interventions. We also start the process tracing assessment now by designing with the consultancy team in order to see, to reflect upon on the process of the innovation and interventions. We will not apply for every cases, but for any cases which is willing to do that, and also which representative for the theory of change, key elements in theory of change, which can generalize or can reflect the general situation of the initiative. And there are a lot of these cross-learning actually happen within the within the initiative management team meeting. And the last one, which is the documentation and communication of evidence. And one of the important activity, which is a bundle, innovation bundle profile. And with this, I would like to hand over to Mira to dive deep into what it is about and how it's relevant for the scaling preparedness and what are the follow-up actions with the team.
So we have a discussion in the end on everything. So I'm just going to jump into the deep dive on documentation and communication of evidence, and having a look at the innovation bundle profiling that I've already been busy with some of you. So just to briefly summarize the objectives of profiling is to document evidence of the innovation and intervention process, and it's an opportunity to adapt the innovation or innovation bundles and interventions to the context and demand, make sure it's very specific and makes sense in the particular context, assess the scalability of the innovation or innovation bundle, reflect on your innovation design, the partnerships needed, adjustments and interventions that might be necessary. It is also an opportunity to strategize the scaling actions and investments, and to foster cross-learning within and beyond the work packages, the countries, and partnerships. So one of the intermediary outputs associated to the profiling is that you may produce the innovation readiness profiles, which are then compiled at the CGR Innovation Bank to the Systems Office. With some of you, we've already started on that. So concerning the template,
what is contained in the profile. There are various components. So the first one is the general description of the bundle components and characteristics. So what is the innovation bundle? What type of innovations are part of it? What's the demand for it? What are related value chain functions? What customer segments are maybe targeted? Is it affordable? Is there seasonality in the demand? Where has it been developed? Has it been piloted? And what are the readiness levels of the innovations contained? The second component reflects on the bundling process. So how did the bundling happen? Who was involved? What are required resources and processes? What's the timeline for bundling, and what are the different actors' roles in bundling? The third component would be the theory of change. So what do you foresee the bundle to have an effect on? What kind of change is envisioned? That can be at the pilot level, but also beyond that when scaled. So does it have a particular gender or climate impact foreseen? Are there any risks that you foresee? For some innovations, it makes sense to look at a cost-benefit analysis. And what are the expected impacts in terms of the CGIAR impact areas? Possibly also potential unintended or negative impacts that you foresee linked to SDGs and linked to the initiative's action areas. Component 4 is a reflection on scaling. So what is the kind of scalability and the potential, and what concrete pathways are there, starting from the current use, but then how adaptable is this bundle really to other contexts and in time, scaling strategies, so including actors and resources, and then a focus on the most promising pathways. What is also the initiative's role? What is the extent and speed, and how can it be accelerated? And component 5, impact. So rather, so how we thought about it at the moment, reflecting on any impact that has been already recorded. Is it equal for the different maybe beneficiaries or those affected? And then also a bit broader, what are the main lessons learned and adaptive planning steps that you currently derive from this information? So we consider this, we label this as flow 1, because it's one way how you could capture the information, but we think it could also look like this, for example, where the first and the last component are the same, but then maybe it makes more sense to first reflect on scalability and scaling, and then on the theory of change of scaling. So we would really also appreciate your feedback. What makes most sense to you? How is the tool most useful to reflecting on your innovation bundle? So we have built these questions in ODK, or rather the cost-free alternative Kobo toolbox. And I'm going to share with you a link to ODK. Some of you, as I mentioned, have already studied on it. And it's the first component that can also lead to these system office published PDFs, IPSR profiles. Let me quickly copy for you the link to the ODK in case you would like to have a look while we are talking. Let me go back to the presentation. And now to link it to the initiative timeline. So when do the different components of the bundling come in? So Min has presented the stakeholder engagement, the cross-learning. Now we have zoomed in into documentation and communication of evidence with profiling. So of course, when you're starting to design, identify, bundle, and you consult the stakeholders, you can start with a description, which can be an ongoing process and can evolve. And maybe you have started with the core innovation, and then later when thinking about scaling and talking to the stakeholders, you realize you need to bundle it with additional elements. So you can also reflect it at that point. And yeah, as an ongoing process into the template. And once you have defined what you would like to work on interesting innovation, you can also already really think of the theory of change, how it can be scaled, and the potential impacts. So we have actually, as Yumi Ghana, and coming in with our innovation scaling expertise, done this bundle profiling for solar-based irrigation bundle in Ghana. And this is a case that we have included in
presentation with you, so you can search for it independently and click on the link that we are providing here. But more interesting, we thought, would be to hear from case studies from this initiative. We have a case study from Honduras and from Ethiopia. And at this point, I would like to ask Federico to unmute yourself and just briefly provide an overview, your experience with using the innovation bundle profiling template.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Miriam. Perhaps two big chunks of information that I thought might be useful. The first one is how this played out in time, and the last one is a little bit about what my impressions were. So this process of innovation identification was kickstarted sometime around February, when we held the stakeholder co-creation workshop that Min was referring to, and Miriam was present here, and she was part of the process of designing it and also capturing the information. We left that workshop with 4 plausible ideas for a pilot, and after a follow-up, it was somewhat clear that we could work with one of the 4 for the type of piloting that the initiative is aiming for. And at that point, we felt confident of registering that in that innovation readiness profile, which is that first picture. And that happened sometime around, I think, March. And it was useful because we took what we learned from them to more like an exploratory phase with our partners, and the challenges made by this tool, and well, in this case, Miriam, were good for actually improving the language of what we wanted to communicate to our partners. During the talks with our partners, we learned a lot of the other things that we needed to set up the proposal for the pilot. So we also learned about all the additional innovations that they're currently using, or some of the innovations that they would need to implement in case we were going to work with that. Then we took that back to the sketch table, and then we started filling the innovation bundling profile, which is the one on the bottom left corner, which requires a lot more knowledge. So I should make a point of mentioning that this is very much still an ongoing process, but we went through a first round of it and filled as much as we could. And through that, we are the better for it. So that was kind of how it played out in time. But when I think about what has been positive of it, well, I think it's good for the past, it's good for the present, and it's good for the future. In terms of past, it's good for challenging some of the assumptions that we're making, and really helping one think whether these things are usually so and so, and that was the first stage. So in the present, it is also good for refining the language of the innovations and the way we communicate them, because, well, at least in my case, sometimes it's fairly clear in my head, but it is good to have somebody challenge that clarity and help the team put it on a clearer, in a clearer way. And finally, it's good for the future, because we've been mentioning that this is a kind of a foresight tool, and some of the sections and components and Mia just mentioned are really demanding on thinking, how is this going to play out when we control things and when we do not control things. So those are the things. So that's useful. I'm gonna wrap up with something negative, because I kind of felt like there needed to be some balance, but I have mostly positive feedback on it. But if I may say, one thing that was challenging is that going through it was very complex. And so perhaps it was at an early stage when we engaged in this, but some of the things were well above our heads at the moment, and it is not that easy to adjust the bundling profiling template to the stage in which the design is at. So it does require somebody knowledgeable, and in this case, Miriam was part of that process to kind of guide, and at the end deciding which questions are are to be skipped, what we should be skipping, and which ones we should really think about. But in the end, it ended up working. And so we are probably going to go back to that innovation bundling profile often as we learn more things. And bottom line, I think that's the most useful thing. We can always go back and see what we've learned. But thanks. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Federico. This is really valuable to have both your positive and your critical feedback. And we have another one from Girma.
Good morning, good afternoon. This is Girma Kasi. I'm an economist working with ICADA and currently leading the implementation of Work Package 1 of the Markets Initiative in Ethiopia. And this is a brief feedback on the innovation bundle profiling template, which I've been working on for the last couple of months with the help of Mirha. So I would be, like I said, very brief, and I'll be talking about some general feedbacks on the template and probably some recommendations which might be useful in improving the instrument, the template. So I found this template to be much bigger than a simple profiling template. Yeah, it says innovation and scaling or scalability profiling, but it's much bigger than that because at least in our case, it has also helped us structure the thought process around the description of the innovation bundle and the definition of the scope of this bundle. So for us, we consider it as a planning tool because once the filling is completed, this template gives actually a very detailed description of the research plan itself. So I think it's more of a planning tool than a simple profiling template. So I think this planning tool would be very useful at the very beginning of the planning process of the research activity, but it can also be used later on once the implementation has started as a monitoring tool because it's a very detailed tool. And it was also very important that we could easily map the outputs and outcomes of our research activity onto SDG goals and CGR impact areas. And the scalability assessment part was also very useful in terms of envisioning the best options to scale up the innovation bundles, provided that they would be useful. And again, the impact section, which is component 5, has an interesting entry on distributional impact. It was not an explicit component of our research plan, but following the discussion we had on this template, I think it was pretty straightforward, to embed a distributional impact assessment in our research design. So probably this common denominator could serve as an anchor, in my opinion, to harmonize our evaluation studies across the value chains and across countries. In terms of recommendations, I would like to suggest a very brief description of the purpose of this profiling or the benefits that would be derived from this exercise. I think that would help in guiding how to use the instrument or the template. For instance, without Mir herself, probably I might not have been able to understand some of the sections, or probably I might have skipped them. So I mean that actually shows that we need to kind of simplify and make the template accessible. And like I said, simplification is very important. There are about 6 sections, and 5 of them are very, very broad. And for some sections, for instance, in the case of resources for bundling, I think it would be important if the ODK is programmed in such a way that it would allow to attach some documents, or probably embed some codes to extract some sections of the research proposals. And the other entries, for instance, for section 4.1, which talks about the current use of innovation bundles, it kind of requires some literature review, and in some cases that could be very, very demanding. So I think it is necessary to kind of tone down those sections, or probably make them a bit simple. That's essentially what I have as a feedback so far, but I found it generally to be a very important planning tool. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, then we would like to have a general discussion and follow up on what you've heard, get your feedback and suggestions. And the first one is on the general stakeholder engagement, since that's such a key component of scaling preparedness. So where and when should stakeholder workshops and cross-learning events be organized? We would love to hear your thoughts on that. And then on the innovation under profiling, we would like to hear your thoughts, if it's any different to what we've also presented, what, why, and how to profile. What are your suggestions also for designing and profiling the bundles, maybe challenges that you foresee in profiling a bundle? And do you see this type of profiling tool as one that you could use with stakeholders, for example, during a workshop? So we would like you to now talk to us and tell us what you think. But we would also like to invite you to use the KISM discussion forum. There's a link and there's also this QR code that leads you to it, where we can continue the conversation.
So I've not applied the ODK tool, like going through the whole process myself. So I guess if I did so, I would have had much more discussion points in terms of feedback or how I see it working and all that. But generally, I think it's a very useful tool, like looking at the different, I've kind of gone through the ODK and the components in pieces and pieces, but now I think I need to sit and go through it from start to the end. But overall, I think it's a very useful tool. It should definitely be a tool that would be able to help in terms of like what Girma was mentioning. I think that would be very helpful in terms of looking at what's happening in one country in different value chains across the same initiative, and even providing some comparability and some lessons learning across the different innovations and the different value chains in different countries. So that definitely would be very helpful. But again, like I mentioned, I think once I'm able to sit and go through the whole tool from the start to the end, then I would also be able to provide better feedback from my side. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Christine. Yeah, sure. And you can reach out also anytime. I mean, you can go through it yourself and save a draft and make submission. Or you can also reach out and we can go through it together if you feel like it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. One other thing I've been thinking through in terms of innovation profiling, of course, it starts all the way from identification of innovations and bundling, profiling, and scaling. I see the whole process as a combined process with the ongoing activities in the different case studies, for example, right? Of course, there are specific activities like profiling where you have to now sit and do the profiling, which is a different activity, but thinking through the scalability of those activities, thinking through the different bundling, that should actually be like the teams, as the implementing teams, we should already be thinking about that as we do our day-to-day activities in the countries, right? It's not like a separate activity where you say now we are coming to do innovation, bundling, and scaling, and it's not separated. It's a combined activity with the normal activities, and then there are those specific stages where we have to say, okay, now we need to review, we need to assess what's happening in terms of the bundling and the innovation readiness, and we actually go through it and do the assessment like you've shown in the tool, right?
Yes, definitely correct. Yeah. That's why in one of our slides we show how this profiling actually integrated into the innovation and scaling processes. Slide 22, if you can show it again. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. From Millie and Spa point of view, we try to engage and encourage the work package and innovation team to do that. But so far, we have very little buy-in. Two of them you see today, right, from Honduras and from Ethiopia. And our concern is how now we can really increase the buy-in and facilitate you to provide your innovation bundles better. Is there anything Melia and SPA team can do more? And is there anything you have to do it from your side so that we can work together to have it done? It's not only the question for you, Christine, but for every of us here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's important. And yeah.
Yes. We also know that it's very time consuming, but based on my experience of profiling solar bay irrigation bundles, we do it at the end, and it took us so long time, and many information actually lost the freshness and the convincing element in it, because we have to get back to 3 years ago in order to do that. So that's why we say, okay, it's better now, even a challenging process for Melia and SPA and for the work package and innovation teams, we still persistently doing it and facilitating the process. Otherwise, at the end of the initiative, it will take us longer time to do that. Bjorn, you have, you want to share? Yes, please.
Yes, now that you start about, the fact that this is indeed time consuming, I'd also like to add maybe a few more critical notes, not only on the template, but also more in general. So as Girma already said, also in his video, it's really more, and it's bigger than just innovation and scaling profiles, which means that indeed, when I was filling this in, this overlaps with lots of other things that we need to do. Like, for instance, as a researcher, you're supposed to make a pre-analysis plan, basically. So what is, part of this, with the whole theory of change, it also comes back in the innovation profiles. And so there's lots of duplication of efforts, which is something that obviously as a researcher, which already are, you're already strained and you're getting increasingly less money, as we have seen in the last few weeks. It's something that I really struggle with. So I think when you really want this, if you really want this innovation profile to be useful, it should be linked in some way also to all the other kinds of all the other kinds of things that we need to fill in, like the reporting that we have to do to PMRS, etc. That would be one of the things. Another thing is also I get it that you need to engage with partners, etc. But again, who is supposed to do that? As researchers also, we have our own budgets. And I've often also had the experience that, partners, they come to these meetings with their own agenda, etc., etc. And, this all makes the process often a lot more challenging than, you make it seem here, like we're all going to be coming together and we're going to solve the problem together, and that's it. And then finally, another thing that I wanted to say is that some of the best practices in impact evaluation, again, looking at this as from the research point of view, if you want to measure impact of a pilot or something, they also often clash with some of the things that Melia and SPA want to see. Like, for instance, you said at some point that these profiles will also help you to adapt the intervention over time. Well, that's something that you're not supposed to do when you're doing an evaluation. You want to make sure that you're evaluating a particular evaluation. If you start changing your evaluation along the way, then you're not evaluating then you're not evaluating the intervention anymore, but you're starting to introduce all kinds of bias. So these were some of the thoughts that I had. I mean, especially the last one. I've mentioned this before when I was talking to people that were responsible for Melia and other work packages. But I guess my main issue is that when I got through this whole presentation, I mean, the feeling is that this is really a lot that is also, again, I don't know, put on the shoulders of researchers, which have to often have often conflicting end goals in mind.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the feedback. I would like to reflect a little bit on the TOC in this innovation profiling. The TOC here is not for the work package TOC that presented in the initiative's proposals, but the TOC here is for scaling that scalable innovation and or innovation bundles. Let's say after you pilot the innovation and innovation bundles, and you assess, you make an evaluation and say, okay, this is scalable in A, B, or C context with these conditions. Then based on that assessment, you now develop a TOC. If you are going to scale that scalable innovation, what will it look like? So it's a little bit different here with the TOC that presented in the proposal. And engaging with stakeholders, definitely agree with you. It's very time consuming, resource, I mean, it requires resources as well, managing the conflict, different interests, etc. That's why we see now the initiative have different, what can I say, pathway for innovation, design, piloting, developing, and scaling. And none of that pathway is right or wrong. It just fit to the context and the needs and the resources of each innovation teams and work package team as well. So it depends. You may say now we just want to work with testing the innovation and see whether it works or not, using scientific methodology to make evaluations of that innovation and to document the evidence. That is definitely right as well, right? Then with that pathway, you have less stakeholder engagement and less time and resources allocated for that. Yeah. So my point here is it depends a lot on your interests, your ability, and available resources. Your here is not your, but the whole team as well. Yeah. And so we don't put one solution for everyone. That's the clear message. And for impact evaluations, it depends on how you see from which perspective, right? If it's from the economics research perspective, you lay out the research design and then you evaluate that. But it also have different ways to do impact evaluation, which is a lot of adaptive management along the process, and you factor those adaptive management into evaluation as well, and then to impact assessment as well. So, and there are some of this process-based impact assessments have been done, and it shows that it works in certain contexts where many factors are changing along the testing and experimenting process. Yeah. And again here, your ways of making evaluation is very much relevant for your works and your context. Yeah. So don't be afraid of not using this. It is definitely fine for us as well and for the initiative. we hope that when you need this kind of profiling, or when you need documentation in the way that it should have, not only showing the evidence, but also have to reflect upon the process of innovations. And these tools, it's quite useful.